Well, hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is an expanded version of One Book, One Bronx. We have partnered with CUNY, specifically the Leonard Leaf Library at Lehman College, which is alliteration at its best. But about a year ago, they reached out, or we got together, the librarian from the Lehman College, Robert Farrell, and we met, we strategized, we bumped heads, and we said, hey, let's come up, something to do around this nationwide initiative that's going on right now called Lift Every Voice, 250 years of African-American poetry, edited by Kevin Young. So it's published by the Library of America, and as part of that, they were encouraging local groups and libraries to get together to come up with a program that sort of reflects the book, but also brings a lot of originality to your own personal program, as well as the region that you're in. So it's a nationwide program right now. Of course, we're in the boogie down Bronx. And we are the only location in New York City that was selected to participate in this program. And as we go on, I'll put links in the chat just so you can get more information about the program, what we'll be doing, but also what they're doing nationwide, because we're all on Zoom right now. If an event is going on in California, Florida, wherever, you can still, connect with that program. So again, I'm Ron Cavanaugh, Executive Director of the Literary Freedom Project. I want to introduce Robert Farrell. Robert is the librarian at the Leonard Leaf Library at Lehman College. I never knew there was so many L's in that title. But Robert, if you want to say a few words.
Yeah, we love the Leonard Leaf Library at Lehman College. So Ron, thank you for putting this reading group together and for One Book, One Bronx. Thank you to our facilitator tonight. And Ron and I have been working together for a few years, going back to the Bronx Book Fair, which some of you might know. In addition to working in the Bronx, I also live in the Bronx over by Ostos. I live close to Ostos Community College. So this is my first foray into One Book, One Bronx, but Ron and I go back a little ways. And I'm really proud that the library and Lehman College can support this important community work and to bring the work of the Library of America, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, and also the National Endowment for the Humanities, which are co-sponsors of the Lift Every Voice project. So somebody had asked 250 years in one book. Well, this book is over 1,000 pages long. Yeah. It is a serious scholarly anthology that really represents not just the history, but the diversity of African-American poetry. So thank you for including us, Ron, and welcome everybody, and happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So got myself out of the way. Paula Ramirez, who is also in the boogie, she's going to be leading the conversation. She's our facilitator. Yeah, and just to let everyone know, we always kind of say in the beginning that it's totally cool if you haven't read the book, that if you just want to come and hang out, if you want to participate in a way that is not connected to the book, we encourage that. If you have some life experience, if you're a poet, if you read Tyehimba before, if you read people or contributors to the anthology, and you just want to contribute that way, by all means, there is no pressure. This is not class. We will not call on you, although we do encourage you to participate. So I got all that out the way, Paula. I will not say another word until almost the end.
You better stop.
Get away, Paula.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. As Ron mentioned, I am Paula Ramirez, and I'm the facilitator for our book in the next couple of weeks. Also proud to name that Tyehimba will be joining us on February 26th. So make sure you have that in your calendars or wherever that needs to live and exist. I also want to echo Ron, as we have other members coming in. This is a community space. This is not necessarily an academic space. And that may be a shift for those of you who maybe are used to entering conversations around literature or any other sort of like social entertainment or engagements that aren't necessarily built with class. So again, as Ron said, if you heard a song, if you saw a movie, if Denzel was in a role that reminded you of something that somebody said, and you're like, oh shit, that's like Denzel in John Q. I want you to name that, right? Like, this is not an academic space, this is a community space. And I'm so honored to be able to facilitate that. I wonder who had a chance to catch up on the reading. I also want to take a quick moment and just acknowledge our book club members who come often, because we had a great author talk last week. So give yourselves a little personal clap, a little, you can nod, say, yeah, I did that. That was awesome. And it's going to be great to continue into the work to prepare for our author talk in a couple of weeks. So, Olio. I actually wanted to start this one differently. I usually go, yo, so what do y'all think? Talk to me. What came up? What stood out? And I still want you to ponder those questions, right? What are the immediate things that stand out to you in this text if you had a chance to either listen to it via audiobook or read it, right? Because those are actually two really different experiences, in particular with this work. And I wanted to know, what is an olio? Has anyone gotten a chance to understand or figure out, can we name as a group an olio? What is that? Did we know that was a thing? Talk to me. Don't Google it now. I see y'all trying to. No, I'm playing. You can totally Google it if you feel like that's working for you. But talk. And I want to name something for our group too. I'm an actor. I love theater. I love operas, musicals, all those things. So this piece, I was excited about the last pieces. This piece is really speaking to me. So talk about delight. It was a delight to see myself in this work so many times. What is an olio, y'all? It's definitely in the book, but what is it? Yes.
Brother Jeff says a miscellaneous mixture of heterogeneous elements, hodgepodge, but I don't see this as miscellaneous. But right. So that's just my own.
I read that it's a stew of various meats and vegetables, and it's highly spiced.
Yes. In relationship to that other miscellaneous definition that was just shared, right? Like a hodgepodge of things together. An olio also is a term that we see in theater, specifically connected to vaudeville, right? An olio was a mix, a hodgepodge of different sort of performers, mostly Black performers, right? Because we're talking about through the Black lens of a Black performer. Post. Yes, no problem. Get the book whenever you're ready. It's okay. We're just going to chat for now. Post-Civil War, a lot of vaudeville performers, because there weren't enough opportunities for individual shows, a lot of vaudeville curators would come together and create what is known as an olio. You also see olio in opera, and it's just an olio is also a term for a mix, right? And that's sort of what we get with this text. We're having a mix of not only different aesthetics, right? But we're also hearing from different characters. Is anyone else getting an opportunity to figure out what olio is or what that word means? Did anyone know that coming into the text? Right? That's really interesting for me because I didn't realize it either. Until I actually went. And then I understood the lens of this text, which is via vaudeville performers and singers in this time. And I wonder, how does that connect for folks? What does that look like? I, for one, don't know many stories that tell those stories, especially of vaudeville performers, Black vaudeville performers. What does that mean? Why are those stories vital, if even important at all?
I think it's interesting because usually when you think about vaudeville, you don't really think about that historical precedent of Black folks doing it.
Absolutely. So we're kind of getting their stories within that, right? Because that's something we don't get. Thank you. And at this point, if you can't answer that question, because it doesn't matter, right? Tell me what stood out to you, because I'm curious.
You know what, I was also thinking, I didn't get a chance to do all the reading, but as far as the reference to Olio is how this is such a mix of artistic forms. So there's poetry, there's prose, they're like mini essays, there's illustrations, and it's an Olio, you know, we're using Olio to mean mix, just like how this book is such a mix of different like literary forms is really interesting.
I agree. Particularly, I want to add to that. It also sometimes felt like dialogue, right? In a play, the way they would read off back and forth. In particular, I'm thinking about the poem. Well, I don't know. I want to call it a poem, but I'm just going to call it pieces because I think we're naming that these are all mixes, right? I'm thinking about Eliza Bethune versus Charity Wiggins. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to read that or if that stood out to anyone.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, who read it? Who's saying uh-huh? Talk to me.
I think Issa, yes.
Issa, what do you notice? For me, when I read it or when I saw it, I read it as a dialogue form. And I'm wondering, did anyone else pick up on that or was it more of a poem?
Which page?
Can you say what page?
So I can't because I have a digital PDF and an audio book, but I can give you the name. Eliza Bethune versus Charity Wiggins.
Ah, I got it.
Page 24.
Page 24. Shout out to the page savers. You know I love y'all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see how the way it's broken up in those separate lines? So I assume one side to be Eliza and the other side to be Charity.
But then also you can read it across and it makes sense also. You could read it like vertically and you could read it horizontally.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. You know, yes.
Yeah.
I definitely read it across. I know best how to take care of Tom. See, after 21 births, God gave me Tom. Megan, thank you for naming that. The form is called contrapuntal. That's right, contra. Someone talk to me.
Okay, I've heard Tyehimba read these poems. Actually, I've witnessed him actually developing the poems. The format is, he calls it, even though they are contrapuntal poems, he calls this sonic sonnets. So he's taken the sonic form and he's broken it up. And the thing that always stood out to me about this work, this Olio work, is that I'm a poet who writes jazz-inspired poetry. So I have a lot of improvisation in my work, and I'm not really a formalist. His book, Olio, is the first book that I've looked at that is really based in form, but it has all of the characteristics of a jazz riff. You can go anywhere in those poems, diagonally, horizontally, vertically, bottom up, top down, and you're going to get all kinds of music, all kinds of improvisation, no matter which way you read it.
You better name that. You better name it again.
It resonates. And so he calls this form sonic sonnets. And I have tried to get him to give a class on how to do this because writing a sonnet in and of itself is not easy. But to do what he did, taking that form and making it so that I, as a person who works with jazz musicians and has a lot of musicality in her work, can look at that form and go, wow, I can improvise anywhere in that poem and it's still gonna come out right.
Wow.
So when you look at each one of them is different, and I've gone to readings where he's had handouts of particular poems, and if he folds them a certain way physically, you get a hexahedron and you can hang it from your ceiling and it can twirl and you can read it, and it's no matter which way it twirls, it's all still making sense, but it is also still letting that music and that improvisation within that form resonate out to the reader.
Yes. Can I ask you one more question? Because that was beautiful. But can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Why is something like that important? Do we feel, or do we name?
Because as a poet, it's always important. You should know what the base is, but you should also know how to break it. So it's no different than jazz, because all jazz musicians know, a lot of them know classical music, a lot of them know country music or whatever. And then they take that and blow it up into something else. And so now you have the creation of jazz and all the different genres of jazz. Absolutely. Based on what came before. And so that, to me, that's the thing that Olio resonates for me.
Thank you so much. Brilliant. All right, we dropping gems, y'all. What's up? Anything else that's standing out? Maybe you want to add on to what we've heard?
I'll just say I've heard Tyehimba read as well, and you can hear the jazz rhythms when he reads it. It's very beautiful.
I love that. In listening to the audio book, it's Olio live, so I'm assuming it's a live performance. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And yes, a lot of jazz interludes. And jazz is its own I feel, the way I'm listening to it, jazz is clearly playing its own character and its own part in the storytelling of these people and what's happening with them.
One of the things that jumped out at me was that on the Eliza Bethune side, you get a very racist characterization of Tom and his life and the inheritance of him as a piece of property. And on the Charity Wiggins side, it's the mother's story. But when you read them vertically, you get these two perspectives. But when you read them across, for me, the mother's story, Charity Wiggins' story, takes over the meaning of Eliza Bethune's.
Yeah.
And it really shows the power of the mother's claim and her love for a blind Tom.
Absolutely.
Well, these poems actually give a humanity to people who were deemed to be freaks, when you think about it. And it gives a humanity to them that has been denied them, while also recognizing how the humanity was taken away from them.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking the same thing. And it also shows the greed and the avarice of the enslavers and the those who kidnapped, like the twins, and they're just thinking about it in terms of how much money can I make for these so-called freaks, and whereas on the other side, you see, like you said, you see, both of you said, you see the humanity, you see the lovingness, and the intelligence of these, people who were just being used.
Absolutely. And to that point, I was able to have an opportunity to read some interviews outside of the text and just see some things on the internet, right? And in doing my research around the text, Jess names wanting to create this work to tell stories that were untold, particularly of Black performers in that time, right? And sort of the parallel naming what you said right now, right? That like telling the other side of the story to someone that seemed as oppressed or not known as their story. When we think about vaudeville performers, again, these are performers after the American Civil War, right? Literally after the fight and the existence of their lives, they then come into the world and perform. And anyone knows if you're a performer, you're a writer, you're a creative, even if you're a teacher, I'm gonna name, it feels sort of like a divine calling. It's an other than self experience, right? If you're a parent, if you are a community leader, if you create your own organization, you must understand and know that feeling, right? We've all had it. That idea of like, oh shit, I've been put on this earth to do this and this only. Hopefully we can all have that understanding. And what does it look like for a vaudeville performer to have to kind of negotiate and live through that kind of life? And Jess talks about writing those stories. What do we think of that?
I think it's significant to think of the time that these people are coming onto the world stage or the regional stage, and people are the impulse is to escape slavery. The impulse is to escape a lot of different things, and Black people are on the road trying to find their family members. As they're on the road, there are a lot of people trying to stop them. And vaudeville, the circus, the blues circuit, all of those are places where people escape to. Right? They have a freedom that they don't have if they had stayed in the traditional culture. They're not necessarily outsiders, but they are outside the regular culture. And I think that trope of people like, traveling with, you see the circus and then you decide you're going to go with the circus. To the, wherever the circus is going, that's where you're gonna go. You're going with them because it gets you away. And you see that trope go well into the early to mid 20th century, where you have people just getting away, getting on the road. It could be the migration road. But that trope lives in the culture for at least 70 to 100 years. And it's a very funny thing, but the writer who wrote, Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote The Little House on the Prairie, she has a story that I think probably has fallen into the public domain, but it's a story of a little white girl who's really, really fat. She goes to see the circus and she can't take home, so she goes away with the circus. And it's a very interesting little novelette of hers that 99% of people don't even know exists, but it's typical of that early American story. And I think Tyehimba manages to go and get some of that history through some of these figures, and Black people run away, but they run away differently, maybe, Not everyone wanted to be free the same way. I'll end there.
You better never end, Jacqueline. You better keep going. Dropping gems, dropping these gems. I'm about to get that tatted on me. Not Black people all run away, but it's different. I paraphrase it, but I'm gonna get that the paraphrase.
Yeah, we all wanted to be free differently,
And in that notion, I want to explore. I wonder again, because I'm using the Audible version. Have we been introduced to Sister Retta Jones yet? Has that come up? No.
No.
Well, then I'm gonna wait. But there is later on in our piece, we do explore the story somewhat, or the narrative of one of the first Black women to sing at Carnegie Hall. And sort of, you know, knowing her story also is to know that she wasn't even allowed to, she did vaudeville later on after performing for presidents and doing Carnegie Hall and going through all of these things because of the difficult journey that meant, right? What does it mean to be Black and trying to be an opera singer in the 18th, 19th century? She couldn't do opera. She did a lot of concert halls. Jim Crow came about later on, and she actually was reduced to a life of vaudeville. Reduced is also a term that her team and her managers use. So that's going to be interesting to sort of explore that life notion. But I guess, look, for once in our lives, I'm ahead of y'all in the book. Wow. Shout out to me. So beside those awesome gems that we've been exploring, are there any other notions that stick out in Olio? Anything that maybe you want more clarification on? Maybe there's something you didn't understand at all, that you read it and you were like, what does this mean? Maybe some of you are going, you know what? I didn't really bang with this that much. And I would love to know that and hear that. Is there anyone who's having a difficult time enjoying this book? And I was
just wondering, like, why his selection of people. I mean, yeah, I guess I won't know until he comes, you know, but why he selected these particular people from a lot of people, right?
Yeah, Ms. Johnson, sort of like what about these folks tell this story, right?
Say it again.
No, I was wondering what his selection of the people that I only really went up to 60, so Blind Tom and then the McCoy sisters. I haven't read past that, but what determined his selection, you know, of people?
Perhaps that's a good question for him when he comes.
That's what I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I'm thinking it, you know.
No, of course.
Oh,
yeah.
Lord, you know.
Well, I know that Blind Tom is one of the central figures that pulled him into this era. Blind Tom, you know, he probably had the reputation that Beyonce has in this era. He had that reputation in the 19th century. And the deep part is 99% of us don't know who Blind Tom, never heard of Blind Tom. But he was the Beyonce of his time. And I think that maybe not, I think he is a key figure in what pulls him into this time frame. And I think he starts to look at who else is on the stage, at that time. And the stage could be large or small. A lot of these people are working regionally, or they're working what they call the Chitlin circuit, right? And the Chitlin circuit could be, you know, the South and the Midwest, you know, like Chicago, Memphis, you know, those kinds of things. But I think what he starts to look at is who else is out there at the same time as Blind Tom.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that understanding. Also naming that somewhere around 1880s, we actually see vaudeville acts going to mostly Black islands and mostly Black countries. Also at that time, they're visiting Montserrat, they're going to Ghana, and they're also obtaining their international reputation, which usually happens in Black and brown body, Black and brown entertainment, Black and brown lens in the United States, right? I mean, up until Black and brown music and culture became mainstream, one, as most artists do, have to then go outside of that context, right? Build that and then come back. And there was no different for vaudeville. So thank you for naming that as well, Jacqueline. Like, they were doing those other circuits that maybe weren't as popular and leaving the United States and gaining global Black community. And what does that look like? Naming that here we are, we don't know who Black Tom was of his time. And at that time, he's somewhere gaining international community, and that can only get you so far as well as a performer, right? And what does that mean? I'm gonna pop, I don't know. Oh, okay. No, please.
Okay. I don't know much about, I mean, I've heard about Blind Tom before, but I don't know about this era, and I don't know much about vaudeville. But Blind Tom was, I mean, his, the person that so-called owned him, really owned him, and you know, said, you know, put him in these different venues. So he didn't have that much choice. And also the McCoy sisters, they were kidnapped as babies. And they were put in, so it wasn't where they said, you know, this was a choice of theirs. So I don't know about the other people, you know, in the book, but so it was like they didn't have a choice. They were being used. I think it said with the McCoy sisters, I looked them up on online, that after that they chose to stay in the vaudeville or circus area after they lost their white agent, you know. So so it's not as, you know, it's not where they just, you know, wanted to be these entertainers, and then they just went on their own. They were used and put into these places, and then maybe after that, then they chose, you know, to entertain on their own.
Absolutely, Ms. Johnson, and naming, thank you for making that connection, because that is actually what we see in this poem of Elizabeth versus Charity Higgins, right? Mom is naming how if Tom were free, right, if the situation were different, he can choose where he wants to go and where he wants to play, right? But under this ownership, under this 9th, 10th ownership, right, that we then see Eliza mention, Tom and his mom will not reunite. Tom will be working and being put on the circuit from Mom's perspective until her dying day, right, until her last day on earth. So just thank you for naming that truth. And that's literally what Jess is showing us within the first couple of poems, right, in the first couple of pieces. I want to...
It really speaks to the strength of, I'm sorry.
No.
It really speaks to the strength of Mama in both. It really speaks to, because, you know, that must have been something else. I mean, it is something else to have your child, you know, taken from you, and then she's fighting for him. And then the twins' mother was fighting for them. So, okay, I'll shut up.
No, y'all keep doing it. Y'all want to shut up tonight? Well, because we have guests. No, but thank you for naming that point, because I think when we talk about Olio itself, right, and the technique that is being sort of used in these shows to sort of add this mix and this hodgepodge, is that understanding of people were just, it was a different sort of freedom. Jacqueline, you said it earlier better than me. But it was freedom in a different way, in a certain choice. And some people were of their own merit, and other people were in forced situations. And I think we're going to, I know, because I read ahead, right? But we're going to explore that more in the pieces to come. I wanted us to do a little thing together. I'm not sure, again, what page this is in the book, but I did hear the audio version of it today. So I'm going to do us all a favor and just jump ahead if it is. But we're going to go, I'm going to, in the chat, if you're able to access it, this poem, this piece, I popped the link in the chat. And it's actually from the book, Blind Boone's Vision. And you know what? Since it's 7:48 and I've been chatting so much, I wonder if someone's able to access it and read it. Would someone like to read the piece for us? That'd be cute.
What page?
Oh, what page is it, y'all? Help me. Blind Boone's Vision.
What is the name of it?
Blind Boone's Vision.
Blind Boone's Vision.
I've also popped the link in the chat.
It'd be good to get EJ on it.
EJ, where you at?
I have to go get my book.
Okay. We got EJ on it, y'all.
Yeah, she's the jazz poet.
Yes. And I want us.
What page, Paula?
Oh, someone support me.
108.
108.
Oh, you're jumping ahead.
Yeah, it's a little bit ahead, but it's okay. We're all jumping ahead today.
Okay.
It's all just for one piece. I want to sort of explore, even in that idea of jumping ahead, right? We're going to hear sort of this one notion of a narrative from Blind Boone in this moment. You're like, who's that? Don't worry, you'll find out. But I want to know, given what we just discussed, understanding what Olio is and understanding sort of the urgency, the stakes of what it means to be performing at this time. What's standing out to you as you hear Boone's vision, right? What is standing out to you most? EJ, if you would just be honors, woo!
What page was it on?
108.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Put your glasses on.
Oh my.
I'm nearsighted, so I don't need them for that.
Hey.
All right.
Got him.
Blind Boone's vision. When I get old enough, I asked my mother, to her surprise, to tell me what she did with my eyes. She balked and stalled, sounding unsure for the first time I could remember. It was the tender way she held my face and kissed where tears should have rolled that told me I'd asked of her the almost impossible. To recount my blinding tale, to tell what became of the rest of me. She took me by the hand and led me to a small sapling that stood not much taller than me. I could smell the green marrow of its promise, reaching free of the soil like a song from earth's royal dirty mouth. Then mother told me how she was newly freed, had prayed like a slave through the night when the surgeons took my eyes to save my fevered life. Then got off her knees come morning to take the severed parts of me for burial. Right there, beneath that small tree, they fed the roots, climbed through its leaves to soak in sunlight. And so she told me, I can see. When the wind rustles up and cools me down, when the earth shakes with footsteps, and when the sound of bird calls stirs forests like the black and white bustling neath my fingertips, I am of the light and shade of my tree. Now, ask me how tall that tree of mine has grown to be after all this time. It touches a place between heaven and here, and I shudder when I hear the earth's wind in my bones. Through the bones of that boxed up swarm of wood, bird and bee, I let it loose and beyond me.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Better give them symbolic snaps and claps. Thank you so much, EJ. What is standing out? If someone could lower their music, I would appreciate it. Thank you. What is standing out?
It sounds like EJ is speaking, but we can't hear her.
For some reason it muted again. Okay, it sounds as though he's combining physical nature with the human being. And that's something that is not really done in a lot of writing. I think we as people of color are very rooted in our natural space. So, and a tree is a tree with its roots and its limbs and everything. That's like the strongest thing you can be, is a tree. And even with no sight, his mother gave him the heritage of, you are as strong as this tree. This part of you is making this tree live. And so you can see because this tree can see.
Mm.
So she gives him a sense of self, that his circumstance with his blindness and in later life when he's put on the stage, he has a sense of self that cannot be taken away from him.
Almost divine, like naming
Right.
that we often in our natural state, that divinity.
Right.
Thank you. Absolutely. Anyone else?
And that would be called personification.
Okay.
Where you take on the quality of something from the natural world.
Oh, so we're gonna let EJ and Jacqueline just drop all the gems tonight? No one else?
Impressed with it's a beautiful piece, to borrow your term, but I was really impressed with the part where she says, well, not she, I make everybody a she. It was the tender way she held my face and kissed where tears should have rolled. And it gave me pause, because we are so used to eyes and tears and moisture. So I was like, where tears should have rolled, but then if your eyes are removed, then you have no tear ducts, I would imagine. So that part was very interesting to me.
Thank you, Sharon.
Very, very thought-provoking, just that part where tears should have rolled.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
It's almost as if, even though it was surgical, it's almost as if his eyes were gouged out, so that there's just empty space there in his face.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's kind of represented, my question is represented in this very, very beautiful poem and so many of the other very, very beautiful poems that he writes, that the poet writes. And as I was reading it, and I hadn't read any of his stuff before, and I didn't know much of this history that's represented in the poems. And so at first I thought, this is so amazing. Somebody could have done the research and written a very traditional history book about all of these people that are represented here. And so the poet, I'm thinking, well, he obviously had to have done that very research to know the level of detail that then gets expressed and given to us. So I felt like I was reading a history book, because in every poem, I am being let into the history of the people that this poem is speaking about. I just find it mind-blowing, I have to say, absolutely mind-blowing. Just this thing that he's doing here, that the poet is doing here. And I'm wondering, because I have never read, I'm thinking, I don't know how much there is on all of these different entertainers and musicians that are being represented here, and how much history there was and data, to read that other people had done. Because I feel like I can tell if, like this last poem, if this comes from him reading a piece of history that talked about the mother it feels like there's something here that the poet is giving of himself. It's not just a mere history. Like to conjure up the very thing that we were just talking about this notion of the tree and that there are no tears on his face. And that comes from the poet. That doesn't come from the history book.
Absolutely.
And I'm just curious and wondering, and maybe there are other people here who do know so much more about this era and these people that are represented here and what has been written about them. How much of it is, you know, Tyehimba Jess searching his soul to tell the, like, how much of it is a kind of like this, a general history, and then how much of it is kind of literary license, you know, where the Tyehimba Jess is choosing to tell the story in the way he's choosing to tell it, like from scene to scene, poem to poem.
Yes.
Okay, when I write poems, I tend to do it on a theme basis or a storytelling basis. And I had a poet, Luis Reyes Rivera, God bless the dead, who one book I was writing was The Tale of a Washerwoman. Now, I did not know any washerwomen. However, when those poems came out, it was as though they were given to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing he told me was that when you are writing something that like Tyehimba is writing, and you're in the realm of personifying somebody else's, some other character's life, that you have to be open enough to let the character talk to you, to let the character explain to you their circumstance. And if you're not open, then it comes across as this forced thing. Yes, there is some license here by the poet to make it more human, to capture the feeling of the mother talking to her child. But if you actually think about it, I'm sure everybody on this call, their mother, their grandmother, their aunt, or whatever, you can sit down and you can remember something that they told you that fits another person's circumstance, even if that person is no longer living. So what he's done here is that he's taken himself to a level where he has a great deal of empathy for the life of these people who are no longer with us.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure he did a lot of research. There's probably a lot of research that can be done at many of the libraries around the country that track the history of the Black vaudeville artists of the time, Blind Boone and the sisters and whatever. Yes, you can go and you can read those stories, and some of them are probably going to be interviews with people that knew them, that knew some of these circumstances. But then how do you as the writer put that on the page so that so that you can have a connection with these people, even though they're no longer here, and communicate to the people who are here that you need to have empathy for these people because they lived through this horrific time and still came out on top.
Absolutely. And the notion that I think in that point, EJ, is so important because Anais, I think what I also hear you naming, I'm not sure, let me know, is that we get a sense that Jess is also going through an internal release. It's not just, it's through that opening, being open enough to let the character talk to you, Jess is sort of being able to then figure out some of their own internal stuff, right? And I think we're also seeing that translate really clearly, and it feels very real. So thank y'all both. Those are excellent, excellent points. I wanna just shout out to all of the activity in the chat, naming that, first, Ron shared a couple of different blurbs and links where we can find other stories about Blind Tom, right? So make sure you go into the chat. One is from Grey Wolf Press. And then Robert also shared John William Blind Boone, a Wikipedia link that gives us a little bit more. And then Yeah, Lydia, that comment was amazing. And I actually want to go into something Megan said. Megan, my bad, I'm about to put you a little on the spot, but I would love for you to, given everything we've named so far, you shared something really important in the chat saying that it's incredible. It's so incredible that these people have been given a certain depth and nuance within this form, in these form of writing, in these particular forms of writing. People who had been gawked at and displayed as spectacles, even in their talent, right? It was still sort of a fetishization of talent and of understanding. He allows them their humanity. Can you talk to us a little bit about that part? Like where in these books, where in these pieces, or how do you feel that he's allowing them their humanity? Or share it with us.
You also forced me to not be lazy and actually get my headphones because I was
Love
using the
it.
chat.
I love when I'm a good influence. You know what I'm saying?
So I see it many times in those contrapuntals, and as I believe it was EJ who so perfectly put it as the sonnets, when they are allowed to be in dialogue with one another because of the form. So, you know, each person, especially when we get to the Mccoy twins, gets to express themselves individually, but as a whole, they're working together. Obviously, these are conjoined twins, or if you have that backstory, they're conjoined twins. So they're also being put into a unit. And he also talks about when he's making these poems, he also talks about these women were also making money at the time and were able to buy themselves out of slavery. And so even though that they had to do this sort of work that was demeaning to them, he also like those triumphs, that endurance and that resilience, is also seen throughout the poem. So he gives them that as well. So we're not just sort of feeling just bad about it. We can also talk about the triumphs, and we can also talk about the endurance and like what that leads to. And so I think all of that is happening because of the dynamic form and the quality of language that he's using.
Absolutely. And I love that you're showing our example through, I would hope that you did that, and you did, showing our example through that poem about the Mccoy twins. He also gives it to us, it's sort of in like 3 different parts, yes, from what I hear. Because I don't have the poem written in front of me. But has anyone else had an opportunity to read that? I would love for us to just visit that real quick as a group. That first piece about the Mccoy twins. You don't gotta feel shame if you haven't read it. It's okay, we love you here still. You're still deeply loved and cared for. No one is gonna shame you. But if you do, Ron, can you help? Do you have a physical copy of the book in front of you?
Dude, what page?
Right.
I haven't read.
Help me out, EJ. I know you got that book there.
I'm looking.
Okay.
While we're looking, can I say one thing about Tyehimba?
Yes, it's page 20 as soon as you're done.
Okay. I've known Tyehimba for about 20 years. And since I first met him, he seems like he's been on this path towards this book. Mm. His work has always sort of revolved around the blues, that even when he reads his work, he often has a harmonica with him. There is a rhythmic quality to his poetry. I think in the past, his first book was about a blues singer, and most of his work seems to be sort of bracketed in this era of the blues. Right, thank you, Robert Leadbelly. So it seems really organic that he is here looking at these characters. They probably found him as opposed to him searching for subject matter. I'm sure that these characters, let me not call them characters, but these people, because they're actual people, came to him as opposed to him doing exhaustive scholarship. Not to say that he didn't do exhaustive scholarship, but I'm sure there was a connection first, and then it sort of bloomed from there.
Thank you. And just for, you know, the folks that are 2 years old in the room, like myself, can we clarify, I mean, who Lead Belly is? Now I know who Lead Belly is, but can we clarify, you know, for the 2-year-olds in the room?
He's a famous blues musician.
Blues guitarist.
Musician, blues guitarist.
Yeah.
Get up, Spotify it later if you're feeling like it, if you have iTunes, whatever you got.
I'm 100% sure that Lead Belly is not on Spotify.
Oh, you're 1,000% sure? You don't know what's on Spotify.
I've never used Spotify though.
Right. That's because last time Ron saw Lead Belly in concert. That's why he said.
Yeah.
He looks so young.
No, play, Ron. You know I love you.
And Lead Belly is a kind of character. I mean, he spends a lot of time in jail and a lot of time going in and out of jail.
Maybe.
You know, he's what he is. That's what I'll say.
He's what he is. Lydia said jokes on Ron. You know we got jokes on Ron here. Respectfully and kindly only. That's a major part of book club, y'all. Okay, Ron, actually, now joke's not on you. I would love for you, are you at page 20? Did you find it?
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Sort of so we can also understand and sort of get that same narrative and tone. We've heard a little bit from Blind Tom, but I would love if you haven't had the opportunity to sort of also knowing that some of this text or later on in the text, again, I'm not sure because I don't have it in front of me, but we also have excerpts from the McCoy Twins autobiography, right? Also in these pieces. So we're dealing exactly what EJ named, right? We see, not only do we feel that embodiment of Jess talking to these characters, but Jess is actually showing us, saying, look, this is what they've said. Excuse me. I got so excited I started coughing. This is what they said, right? This is what they said, and this is sort of what they're trying to tell us through that. Ron, would you be able to read for us that beautiful voice? Thank you.
You know, should I read?
Just read one part of this excerpt.
What I was going to say, should I read vertically or horizontally?
Let's let the group decide. What do y'all think? Chime in, unmute yourself.
They can be read both ways.
Okay, do you want it? All right, which one are you reading, Ron? What's the name on the top?
No, I really would like everyone to just vote real quick. Just chime in and say vertically or horizontally how you think you should read it.
Millie McCoy and Christine McCoy.
Well, I'm going to vote for both ways.
Thank you.
Something different.
Well, y'all ain't
we have
both.
2 votes for both ways. Oh, we have many nods for both ways. Let me look to the other page. Y'all off camera, I feel your votes somehow. I don't know.
So I'm gonna read vertically. So I'm gonna read the first column and the second column. Is that allowed?
Yes, that's allowed because people are requesting it. So.
Cool. I need my light.
Okay.
Blind Tom never saw my 2 bodies fused at the hip. His ears saw our 2 bright voices blooming from the pulse. Slowly, he laid hands on my face, and then he knew. But he was more curious than afraid, and even joined our chorus. We sang like one family praying thanks over one plate. Our bodies' betrayals have made us away, out of no way. We are the lucky ones, I guess, aren't we? Folks come miles to see the true freaks, a sight and sound to amaze, to stun, to cause wonder at God both kind and cruel. It's honest work. We do it with smiles hard on our faces to show this world the gut meaning of grace. He could only hear the way we were joined, twinned breaths colored in harmony, our blue, reaching out through his darkness, through the void. And he wasn't sad for us, thank God. He laughed with hunger for more, wishing we could stay, full of our own song. We're more than circus acts, free of the worst bondage. We're the self-owned, 2-headed nightingale, Yes, we are, for sure, the best duo songbirds traveling to each town. We do it knowing full well that this is the rightful place to show the world the gut meaning of grace.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. I loved hearing it vertically. That was nice. Good choice.
Can I read it one other way?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
To show this world the gut meaning of grace. It's honest work. We do it with smiles hard on our faces. We do it knowing full well that this is our rightful place. To cause wonder at a God both kind and cruel. Freaks, a sight and sound to amaze, to stun. The best duo songbirds traveling to each town. I guess, aren't we? Folks come miles to see the true two-headed nightingale. Yes, we are, for sure. Out of no way, we are the lucky ones. Free of the worst bondage, we're the self-owned. Our bodies' betrayals have made us away. Like one family praying thanks over one plate. Full of our own song, we're more than circus acts. And even joined our chorus, we sang. With hunger for more, wishing we could stay. But he was more curious than afraid. And he wasn't sad for us, thank God. He laughed. He laid hands on my face and then he knew. Bright voices blooming from one pulse, slowly. Reaching out through his darkness, through the void. Fused at the hips, his ears saw our two twinned breaths colored in harmony, our blue. Blind Tom never saw my two bodies. He could only hear the way we were joined.
Wow.
You read it from the bottom up?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
That's
I told
exactly
you.
what she did.
That's why he said
what she did.
That's why he said these were sonic sonnets when he did them, because you can read them in any direction and you will get a different feeling, a different emotion, a different history.
I think I've got one more, I think, too.
Thanks, Jim.
You can read just the joined lines, right? If it's the two bodies and the two columns, you can also just, he laid hands on my face and then he knew our bodies' betrayals have made us away to cause wonder at a God both cruel, kind and cruel, to show this world the gut meaning of grace. And that's kind of like the spinal cord of the thing.
Absolutely.
There's also one other thing about this book, if somebody hasn't noticed. If you flip through the actual book, you'll come to pages that are doubled over. If you look at those pages closely, they are perforated. They are, you can take them out of your book and frame them. You can fold them in different ways. You can hang them as ornaments.
Thank you, Tara. Tara's showing us all, if you want to look
This book is truly an olio of styles.
And there's also illustrations in the book. A few illustrations, not many.
One of the things, because I also, I also know Tyehimba, and one of his challenges was not just writing the poems, but finding a publisher who was willing to print the book as he wrote it, as he saw it. He spent a lot of time going to different publishers, and if anything, that's what took the time, was trying to find, someone that would be willing to respect the way that he wrote this book, because not every publisher has the capability or even wants to do that. And it might be interesting to hear him talk a little bit about that. But I know that was part of his challenge and his journey in putting this book together.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And especially in what he did himself, it's a self-described 4-dimensional experience, right? Some people write it as like the first 4D. And in that level of engagement, I want to hone in on something that Lydia just shared with us. On page 6, there's an illustration that's really capturing. Lydia, can you talk to the group a little bit about what's standing out for you and what's happening? I know Susan, right? Me too. I need to get my hands on this book. Lydia, can you tell us about that? Page 6.
What page?
Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Tara. It's the one right before page 7. I don't know, like it just, I mean, thinking about the Olio and, you know, the many different voices coming together, the contrapuntals and the divided voices, but them also being unified. This reminds me of it's not Nigerian. It's an African saying, Ubuntu, I am because we are, right? Like, so just like the being, like the sense of oneness from many. And so the image really speaks to me. And then now that we've spoken a lot about Olio, right? To me, it makes sense that it's one of the first images as we get into the text.
That mix, right? Is that sort of what you're describing? That
right.
Yeah. Right. Beautiful and wonderful connection. Thank you. I saw something that someone had put. Oh, I want to share with you that Ron also found Leadbelly by Tyehimba Jess. It's described as one of the most powerful exchanges between poetry and history, right? And if you want to find the link to that, you can go right into our chat and grab it. And yeah, I love the fact that we're going to be able to sharing more images. With 9 minutes left, I do want to make sure that we sort of set ourselves up for our next, so just so we know where we're reading. But before then, is there anything else that's speaking out or standing out that you want us to know as a group or that's coming to you in these first 60 pages? Important, and even more important, are there any questions? Is there anything that maybe we don't understand or we need a minute to go over?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Let's go.
Okay, so in the beginning, it's a letter to Dr. Du Bois about Scott Joplin. So I just was wondering, like, how does he figure into all of this, you know? Or does he? Or, I mean, so anyway, that's a question.
So let's
Scott
just,
Joplin, and I think
that's a great question. Let's just, no, but let's just stop there for that 1 second. Anyone maybe who hasn't shared that has a notion to this answer? How do you think this person comes into play later on in the text or in the text currently? And it's okay. Maybe we don't know. Maybe we're like, yo, I have the same question.
And he's throughout, you know, Scott Joplin did, ragtime, and you know, he's a great composer and everything, you know. So, and then another question that I do have is, like, the churches. Are these all churches that have been burned? You know, like above.
What I have to say about? I'm sorry. Oh, one more time. Okay.
Hello.
Oh, okay. The names of churches, like above Jubilee and below Jubilee, throughout. And
Thank you,
I know, like, the first one is the African Methodist Episcopal Church that was burnt, or where people got killed. So I don't know if these represent, like, tragedies, all of them, within these churches. These are just questions I'm throwing out because I don't know.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing with us. And if anyone feels like they know, feel free to chime in. If not, are there any other questions that are standing out?
Not a question, Paula. Did I unmute myself?
Not a question, but a gem. Yes, Sharon.
Oh, the illustration, the first illustration that he shares with the reader on page 6 it also reminds me of the tree of life. Because from this, what looks like one person, everyone else branches out. And it's very symmetrical. It reminds me of the tree of life.
What page again?
Number 6, page 6.
Tara, show it to us. You know you're my page shower. Show us where we at. Show us this illustration. You know we all looking for Tara right now. Like, Tara, where it at? Show us.
Yes. So.
No, I see it. I see it. Thank you, Sharon.
And also, just one last thing. I was flipping through earlier, and I don't know what page it is, but we will come to it. It's after page 60. I saw a paragraph, and it reminded me of some of the works of Jacques Changay. Just bits and pieces and phrases, and they just really draw in the reader. And they reminded me of some of her work. And it's not from For Colored Girls, it's another book, and I have it, so I have to remember what that title is. But it also deals with minstrels and vaudeville.
No, I think I think I know the work you're speaking of as well.
It's a yellow cover.
Yeah, I also can't remember the title, but I want to name that poet's work also gives us a theatrical sense. It also lives outside of the form that is poetry and sonnet, right? Like, many things with it. So I think those connections are beautiful, because what we're naming, what Jess has done here, especially with the sonic sound, whoa, say that 100 times. What Jess has done here with the sonic sonnets has allowed us to sort of create also these other external dialogue, almost theatrical pieces, right? That I keep calling it in a sense. So that's a beautiful connection. Oh, Ron is just giving us gems. Ron also put in a link to our current book, Olio, and all of the different awards that Olio has won in the past. And I'd love to share, Robert, if you want to talk to us a little bit more about this quote that you just put in the chat, which says the phrase, "Our bodies, betrayals, have made us a way out of now way." No way is what
out of no way.
No way.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
Our
sorry,
bodies, betrayals that have made us a way out of no way. You're trying to make sense of it? Talk to us.
Yeah, I feel like in that poem, that phrase just resonates. And, this making a way out of no way seems to resonate throughout a lot of the poems. People who are, severely challenged, but make a way out of this no way. And, I'm just it's almost like a paradox. I'm scratching my head, trying to really make sense of that.
I used to hear that phrase a lot from my grandmother and my granduncles, and they got it from their mother. And it was something that was very a standard thing to say in the South. And it was a standard thing to say, because I grew up in Harlem, and a lot of people migrated from the South to Harlem. And you're always making a way out of no way. So you may not have something, but maybe your neighbor down the street has it, and they are willing to give you some of it so that you can make a way with what you have to do. If you couldn't be the teacher, then you went and you had to get a factory job, because you had to make a way for yourself in the world. There's nothing for you to fall back on.
Right.
You're not going back down south. You're not, you have to make it the best way you can in your life. And that is what gets passed down to many children, brown and black skinned children.
Absolutely.
You have to make a way out of no way, because you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, well, whatever it is in your life, because you can't really rely on that you're going to have something to fall back on.
Absolutely.
So that's where that comes from. So in the case of the twins, they were born conjoined, which in those days was considered freakish, but they were able to take that disability that they had, because there wasn't any way, there wasn't any separating twins back in those days. Surgeons, and even if that was available in those days, you couldn't be sure that they weren't going to be experimented on. So they had to make do with the body that they had. And they did this thing, and they were put on this stage, and they kept staying on this stage, making the money, which enabled them ultimately to go back and buy that plantation they were born on and own it. So they made a way, when the world said, you are not going to do anything, they made a way to survive. So that's what that means.
And to be in their story. And thank you so much for naming that. And naming, again, something that's really, we're not going to speed over that idea or the notion that the Black and brown body, particularly embedded in poverty. Let's think about the different levels of socioeconomic standards in which we enter spaces and understand that, you know, I grew up in that. Make some out of nothing, we gonna make a way out of no way, right? Brenda so eloquently put it, lemon out of lemonades, baby, right? We've all heard that. She didn't say baby, I said baby. But you understand, right? We've all heard this notion that whatever we're given, we have to make something out of. And I want to name that in a Black and brown political space or not political space, whatever this is, that is usually the story. And as we enter this land and we continue on in these works, how do we understand that? But also, particularly if you're sitting here in a Black and brown body, how do we break outside of that notion too? The idea of, and looking at what our ancestors and what the performers before us have had to move through, right? It is 8:30. So I want to thank you all you should all give yourselves a little pat on or something, because you did a great little job staying here with me. We've had an amazing time. I want to name for you before we sign off that we're meeting again next week, same time, same place. We'll be going through pages 61 to 150. And in 3 weeks, Tyehimba will be joining us. Please feel free to pop any love or anything you want to in the chat or sign off. And y'all like, who are you? But I love you. You don't know that, but my book club members know that. I love you sincerely and deeply, as much as my Black body can.
And we love you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Anais. Have a beautiful night. Stay safe, stay warm.